Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. We are going to talk about NFTs today, but it's not just me. I'm joined by regular guest James, editor of blockchaingamer.biz. How you doing, James?
Hi there, I'm good. You?
I am good. Just so listeners know, I'm doing a complicated thing today where I'm trying to also screen grab a record video of something else I'm doing. So this will probably be a bit complicated. But anyway, we'll see how we go. It's always good to experiment, isn't it? So the reason that we're talking about NFTs today, actually, do you want to explain what an NFT is first, James, before we pile into the technical detail?
Yeah, absolutely. So within these specific games, we have these two different kinds of tokens on a fundamental level. ERC20s, which operates as a kind of virtual currency for each of these kind of games. And then you have the digital items that you can get within the games or that make up the underlying premise of the game. So these are referred to as non-fungible tokens or ERC721 non-fungible tokens. And they're growing significantly and at a quite remarkable pace. And their sort of relationship, both within games and also what they mean to developers, publishers, gamers, is really transitioning. So this is one of the reasons why we're quite excited about NFT NYC and the various speakers that were in attendance.
We go back and talk about blockchain games and games using the blockchain, and I think blockchain games are a harder thing to do. Depends on what blockchain you're doing on, but certainly on Ethereum, pretty much impossible to do. Whereas games using blockchain, that's where NFTs really fit in, because they're basically just assets that are secured by the blockchain. It can be used in games in various ways, but it's kind of a low hanging fruit. It's just basically a scarce, or it's a unique digital item that has, I guess, what they call it, provable ownership, true ownership.
I think so, yeah. And it's one of the reasons why they represent a truly revolutionary thing for the world of gaming, in that it gives a far greater degree of sovereignty back to the player, as in they have full, authentic ownership over the various items that they get within the game. And we've seen that with marketplaces too, like Wax in the past.
So, do you own any NFTs, James?
There are a couple actually that I do have on the Engine Digital wallet, so I'm gonna have to go through them and in order to ascertain which ones I've got exactly, because I've been taking advantage of their QR code scanner, and it's because of that that I ended up accruing a small little collection. So right off the top of my head, the first one was Engine Platform. So it's kind of nice that I own something that I'm currently within. It's a rather meta sort of thing, which is kind of ironic. And then we've got the Multiverse. So I'm officially the Multiverse. Why it's got a price tag of one engine, I'm not too sure.
Oh, well, but that's kind of the clever thing with Engine, isn't it? That all the assets they create are backed by the Engine coin. So anything you create has a nominal value. It may have, so that thing you're talking about has a nominal value of one engine coin. You may sell it for 10 engine coins. You know, if it has that value, kind of grows almost. It's created by the community. But if at any point you want to, they call melt it back, you can always get some money out of the economy.
Yeah, it's one of the amazing things. It's kind of like a reciprocal relationship that developers, users, and the underlying platform have with one another. In that you not only have the ability to melt down these non-fungible tokens into the currency that it's backed by, but developers also have the opportunity to mint their own NFTs and back it with its own engine in order to add to into its wider game or the wider multiverse.
And this is the one thing that I really like about Wax, Engine Coin. Whether that will work, I don't know. So most NFTs, my problem with most NFTs is they are sold as kind of pre-sale items before a game's out. So that's a way of generating revenue for a developer who doesn't have any revenue to make the game, is they go out and they sell these, whatever they are, their vehicles or cards, playing cards or land or characters or whatever. And they sell them. They go, these are going to be much more expensive when the game launches, so get them now. And so obviously it's less now than it was when the Ether price was more expensive. These things tend to happen on Ethereum games. But you can end up with what I'm calling a bag of bad decisions. So have you got or maybe a wallet? Have you got a wallet of bad decisions, historical bad decisions you made when you bought NFTs that you now regret?
Oh, good question. I mean, I've been able to kind of keep myself at arm's reach with any of these sort of initial item offerings that we can almost call them, or item pre-sales that have taken place. But I still remain incredibly tempted by a couple. I mean, I know for a fact that even while Engine with its various suite of multiverse compatible games have a bunch of pre-sales going on, I've been tempted to buy a couple of chests here and there. So it's not essentially that I've made a couple of pocket full of regrets right now, but it's probably going to be the case sooner or later that I'm going to end up making those regrets.
Okay, yeah. So you can't see this because we're doing a podcast, but I'm doing the video as well. So at the moment, I've got logged into MetaMask, and I've got my OpenSea account open, and also a few other eMoon, and just to see what kind of NFTs I've got, and it does not scary. I mean, I'm kind of overplaying it that way, but it is surprising suddenly how many you've got. So I've got 10 Mytherium cards, 8 Crypto Kitties, 8 Axes, 5 Gods Unchained cards, 3 Blockchain Cuties, 1 Hedgie, 1 character from ETHtown, 1 Gods Unchained Kitty statue, 1 something from Bitterzen. I don't know what that is. Is it a character? Something from Crypto Wars. That was a free thing they gave out. Some land from Axiom Zen. Now what's called a legacy Crypto Space Commander spaceship, and a chain monster. And I kind of thinking, well, did I need all those? And this is my kind of problem with the NFTs. So I have these things. I spent money on them. Obviously, when Ether price was higher, buying things at a tenth of an ETH was more expensive. I was kind of buying them to experiment with the game, so that's okay. I didn't expect them to go up in value. But I think that there is, even if not overtly stated by the developer, there is a temptation or an assumption that you're buying these items that will go up in value. I guess the kind of token speculation bubble is gone now. And to a degree, some of that speculative kind of juice has gone into, buy an NFT, and in a year's time, it's going to be worth like twice as much. I mean, do you see any of that? Do you feel when you're going to buy, you might buy something because it's might be more valuable in future?
I certainly do, yeah. I mean, I see it more from the case of, like, for example, one of the great examples of good item selling would be Lucid Sight. So they've got a couple of games that I have been doing item pre-sales for, and they've been doing remarkably well. I mean, you've got MLB Crypto Baseball that's been selling out quite effectively. And the thing with those ones is that they work on a system where they mirror the performances of their real life counterparts being in the baseball leagues. And whenever there is a significantly brilliant record within that baseball season of a particular player, that can allow for that same digital asset to appreciate in value. So it's in that I see there being certainly resale value. The same with its Crypto Space Commander. And I think there was another one which had a digital asset in which players could become active council members. I think it was Cryptic Conjure. And they have something called Council of Nine. And that one allows you to actually adjudicate and make votes on significant changes within the gaming ecosystem. So I see there being a lot of value there. But much as you said about this initial bullish trend within the NFT market going away, we're seeing a lot more in the way of skepticism towards the longer term value of these digital assets. And it's a significant changing in the relationship between users and the items that they're being advertised to in pre-sales. And as a result of this kind of winter, it's resulted in a lot of premature ends to pre-sales, as we've seen from the likes of Atabla.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely the case when people are using it purely as a way of raising money. Now, it's fine to raise money. A lot of these blockchain game developers are not experienced companies. They don't have any cash flow anywhere else, so they literally need to bootstrap their company by selling these things. But equally, the amount of money, as we've seen from Kickstarters back in the day, which is a similar sort of thing, not on the blockchain, but people have raised a lot of money and then realised, we've never made a game before. We didn't realise how hard it is. We just can't do it. And I do think, I don't think it has mattered that much because the price of crypto kind of collapsed, and so that kind of destroyed the market before it got too speculative. But I do think there is it picks up again. The thing that concerns me a little bit about NFTs is that kind of way that they are kind of marketed. And for something, if you buy, even if you buy a crypto kitty, I've got some really cheap crypto kitties that I probably can't sell now. They're not valuable in any way, and there's almost like 1.5 million crypto kitties now, or there will be soon, and that's because people are breeding them. And I think that community is fine because they enjoy breeding them and making these collections. They don't necessarily expect to sell them. I think for other, the Major League Baseball crypto baseball game is an interesting one, and it's actually one that I'm thinking of maybe experimenting with. So buying more NFTs. Maybe it's my terrible obsessive character, but I think that's kind of interesting. And it plays into this kind of Major League Baseball license. There is I don't know. I just kind of feel that could draw some people in to buy things for more money than they should probably be spending. Because they think, well, maybe I can sell. I mean, maybe the Babe Ruth stuff, which is like their top player, maybe you can resell a Babe Ruth. But if you just buy, some low level kind of player, I kind of think the value you have is the value you get from using that in the game, rather than hoping at some point you might resell it. And I think developers just need to be clear on that point.
Yeah, that is one of the things in which we're seeing a great diversity on how we approach non-fungible tokens. As we said about CryptoKitties, there's a huge volume of those ones, but it's also about how players intend to use those ones. It's not only CryptoKitties, but we have it from blockchain cuties too, in that a lot of the value of these NFTs is the kind of pairings that you can make and the kind of end result that you can get in like pairing up specific NFTs. I know that blockchain cuties has a particular rarity one where you can get exclusive kinds of digital assets all through almost luck of the draw or like mathematical chance in that sort of sense.
Yeah, actually blockchain cuties. The other interesting thing is I think that it is good, and this happened with blockchain cuties. Actually, was I think originally you needed to buy a cutie to play the game, and I didn't want to buy one originally, and then somehow I got kind of airdropped one. I don't quite know how that happened, but I think it's previously people were also using NFTs as a kind of pay to play mechanic. So you want to play this game, well, you got to spend at least like I don't know, some ETH, tenth of an ETH to buy an NFT to start playing the game. Which is in a sense fine if people have a lot of ether lying around, but equally you're going to lose a lot of people who just aren't going to. I'm not bothered. I don't care about this game. I don't know about this game. Whereas if you can kind of give a low level character to begin with, that then the player the game developer could then build kind of value, non-financial value around that. Build kind of the experiences you get as a player using that character. We see that in games all the time. People build up massive attachment to certain characters, certainly in RPGs. I think the character thing kind of works well. The other thing that's interesting, and we're seeing a lot of this now, is land sales. So land as an NFT, which is obviously less anthropomorphic, I suppose. What's your thoughts on land sales?
Now, there are a couple of really interesting examples that we've got of land sales. So a few that I can have at the top of my mind would be Mega Cryptopolis, its counterpart Moon Cryptopolis. You then have Decentraland, and the more recent example is some of the initial success that we've seen from My Crypto Heroes. Now, the way that it started out for Mega Crypto and Moon Crypto is that it was literally just patches of land in which it was assumed that there'd be additional value going forwards in the kind of dividend yields it would have with other players being around it. Because I think it's as you buy a particular patch of land, its value goes up as more and more neighbors buy the patches of land around it. But you then have Mega Cryptopolis, which is recently announced that they are trying to introduce almost a micro ecosystem of transactions on top of that land. So if you build a particular kind of building and have a particular grade of citizens within those, it can help to mature the economy and make the land even more valuable. And then you have the final example, which is the likes of My Crypto Heroes, which I don't know. I don't know if you'd seen as well, but My Crypto Heroes have seen some pretty interesting initial success, while they haven't really disclosed to what extent the amount of money that they managed to raise off these patches of land. There's an interesting sort of system that they have with users being able to buy huge sectors of land that are delineated with specific unique digital assets on them, as well as a system of like tournaments that can be set up within those sectors of land between individual users, as well as individual teams from those set maps.
I mean, I think the reason people like land is it just allows a lot more game features, lots more complexity. So, I guess I bought some land in Axie Infinity. So if you're looking at if you're watching the video version on YouTube, I've got a little bit of land there. And you can you can place items on it. So as well as when you buy the land, you get these items that you can kind of place on there, and the land, the position of the land in the wider world is is important in terms of kind of being closer or further away to kind of different kind of features, different kind of spawning areas or ways of speeding up, leveling up, or health, speeding up kind of health. Getting more health. So this thing's kind of interesting. As you say, my crypto heroes, I can't work out how the land works, and they're selling like big batches, aren't they? So I think there's only 4 batches of land they're selling. We've seen a similar thing in Decentraland where they sell big chunks of land and then people parcel it up. I mean, that's kind of very interesting as a speculative kind of scenario where you actually need quite a lot of money to buy these big plots, and then you need some sort of system of then reselling it, cutting up into smaller plots. I think that's kind of interesting. The problem I kind of have is, I don't think at the moment blockchain games need to be more complex. So I'm kind of a little bit wary. I suppose for the people who do have a lot of money and are capable of kind of building these sort of things. I mean, we definitely see it in Decentraland, which is all about kind of land really at the moment. It does allow a different sort of player. So maybe my concerns are don't really matter so much because it can be dealt with in a different way. But for all these kind of things, the things that NFTs worry me about is just about like a money grab, So we'll see. Just to point out, the other reason we were talking about NFTs this week was there was a big conference in New York about called NFT, isn't it? And you spoke to some of the people there. So what do you see the kind of trends for NFTs? What's your view on having spoken to some of those people at the conference?
Well, one that really comes to mind would be the guys from Guild Crypt, I should say, and they're one of the members of their development team. I think their CEO, who's called Akil Fernandez, and it really brings up this notion of intrinsic value that are attached to quite valuable non-fungible tokens. And what he proposed, and I think it's both Guild Crypt as well as another company that are involved in this system called NFT fracturing, which is the idea that rather than buying a non-fungible token wholesale and paying out a huge amount of money, hypothetically, if we were to take these patches of land which were selling for about 500 ETH a piece, so not exactly within the realm of the average user when it comes to investment value, but I mean, according to him, it almost seems as though you could fracture that same non-fungible token, divided up piecemeal, so that way users can get on the shopping floor of this one for, say, 0.5 to 1 ETH, and each of them would be kind of shareholders within this specific non-fungible token, and they kind of come to some kind of consensus about when exactly to sell this NFT, and as a result they end up turning a profit that kind of way. And it reminded me a lot of the way that joint stock companies used to work in the 17th century, but that's going into a history lesson, and it was interesting for that reason. The other part of it too was speaking to the guys from Crypto Kaiju, particularly Oliver Carding, and he was talking about the use of blockchain technology in order to make effective real life non-fungible tokens that can be sold both in real life and online.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something much more tangible about, I'm looking at his talk now, tokenizing physical collectibles. I mean, that's a much smaller niche because obviously at that point you're handling physical items. So the resale there is just much more complex because obviously you're reselling a physical thing that has to be kind of sent around the world. Although Wax are doing that. I mean, they built a system built around. I mean, supposedly they're going to handle sneaker sales and have kind of bonded warehouses where all this stuff happens. I think the other thing I think is that very quickly we are getting very complicated in terms of these NFT standards. So we had, I guess, ERC 721 is the big one everyone uses, and now we've seen fracturing of that. So we have ERC 721X, which I can't remember who's using that one, but then we have ERC 1155, and then I was reading something from the Sandbox people, and they were going into incredible detail about their standards and how their smart contracts were working and how they want to do all this stuff. And it's logical. It kind of made sense after I read it several times, but it just seems. I just wonder how the user experience. How's that going to work? And it just seems incredibly complicated. Whereas owning a CryptoKitty and breeding it still seems to me, I can just see how that works. I can see how that gets scale. Everyone understands it. Suddenly, when you start mixing, ERC20s and ERC721s and putting them in bundles and blah, blah, blah. I mean, if the user experience can support that, then I think that will be amazing. But equally, I think that's going to be a couple of years off. And I wonder a little bit whether we're overplaying how we can bridge the value and the non-functional value of NFTs with actually kind of user kind of understanding and acceptance. And always the thing with me for blockchain is more and more I worry about the financial aspects and the user aspects and how those two can be kind of conflated. But maybe that's just my little hobby horse.
No, I certainly agree. It's very much about having there be a system of token standardization that is used by these game developers that is not only like functional to their immediate usage, but also something that you don't necessarily have to take somebody on a correspondence course in order to get them to understand. I mean, one of the reasons I kind of like both ERC 1155 and 998 is that the real application of them both is almost immediately and readily apparent. So, for those that are unfamiliar, ERC 998 is a protocol that is used predominantly by BitGuild, but I don't know what kind of longer term value that's going to have if they're moving over to Tron with the likes of Bitizens. But it's basically something that allows you to attach other 721 tokens to a single avatar, meaning that under 998, you could have somebody kitted out in a bunch of different 721 tokens and sell that off as a pack, which is kind of interesting. But I think I remember talking about NFTs during Blockchain Gamer Connects in London, and we were talking about whether or not some of these NFTs were the equivalent of sideways trading and whether or not they had any longer term applications for a broader gaming market.
I mean, certainly when I've raised my concerns about people not being able to sell off NFTs in any way, which is why I like the engine kind of melting scenario, is people have kind of said, oh, bundling will be good, so you can just bundle up. And I've noticed some people are starting to bundle things up, buy 5 kind of crypto kitties. The only problem with that is psychologically, we all know when we do to kind of retail bundling, actually, if you have some really valuable things and then you put a non-valuable thing in there, you actually decrease the value of the entire kind of bundle. So, and the other thing is, who is actually going to provide liquidity in this market to buy up all these bundles of low-level crypto kitties if people want to get rid of them? I mean, when it comes to selling stocks and shares or tokens or whatever, if you're selling a token, someone's got to buy it, and that's kind of how pricing works out. I just kind of think a lot of this talk about NFTs as an investment or an asset value, or how to value NFTs as a kind of financial asset is we just have nowhere near enough kind of history or kind of liquidity or kind of market positions for anyone to make any real sense of this, other than I think actually there was someone who did actually try and do that with CryptoKitties. They said, was it better to invest in CryptoKitties or Bitcoin? But Bitcoin's being bought and sold all the time, in billions of dollars a day, and CryptoKitties, there's a lot of them out there, but I think the market volatility for are they being bought or sold is pretty minor. Anyway, that's probably enough about NFTs. Thank you very much for your time, James.
Oh, no worries. It's always been a pleasure.
And thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you've been watching on YouTube on my new experiment, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. But just enough for me to say thanks to James, and don't forget to come back and find out what's going on in the world of blockchain games next week.